They told me to get out. So I did, and I took everything with me. Let me back up. My name is Gerald. I'm 68 years old. I spent 41 years working in commercial real estate buying, developing, selling. By the time I retired, I had done well for myself. Not flashy well. Quietly well. The kind of well where your neighbors don't know and your accountant does. My wife Carol passed away 4 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. 12 weeks from diagnosis to the end. We'd been married 39 years. The house we shared in Scottsdale, a 4-bedroom with a garden she kept better than any professional ever could, felt like a museum after she was gone. Every room had her fingerprints on it. Every corner reminded me that she wasn't coming back. My son, Daniel, called me about 6 months after the funeral. He and his wife, Renee, had just had their second child, a boy named Oliver. Their first, a girl named Sophie, was 3 years old. Daniel said they were stretched thin. He said the house in Columbus felt crowded. He said, "Dad, why are you rattling around in that big place alone? Come stay with us for a while. The kids would love having you close." I want to be honest about something. I wasn't naive. I'd heard enough stories from men my age to know that moving in with your adult children is rarely as simple as it sounds. But Daniel was my son, my only child. And I missed being around family. I missed noise in a house. I missed someone calling my name from another room. So I said yes. I sold the Scottsdale house. Made a solid profit. Between that, my retirement accounts, and the investments I'd been quietly building for 30 years, I had a little over $2 million liquid, more than enough for the rest of my life. I wasn't one to brag about it or wave it around. Carol and I had always believed money was a private matter. I moved to Columbus in November. Daniel and Renee had a nice house, 4 bedrooms, in a good neighborhood, the kind of street where kids ride bikes and neighbors wave. They gave me the basement suite, which was finished and comfortable. I had my own entrance, my own bathroom, a small sitting area. It felt like an arrangement that could work. From the first week, I made sure to carry my weight. I offered to cover utilities. Daniel said that wasn't necessary. So I said, "Then let me pay rent." He laughed and said I was being ridiculous. We landed on an agreement I would contribute $1,500 a month toward household expenses, groceries, and whatever the kids needed. I also started picking Sophie up from preschool 3 days a week when Daniel was at work and Renee was busy with Oliver. I cooked dinner twice a week. I fixed things around the house. The leaking faucet in the upstairs bathroom. The garage door that wouldn't track right. The back fence post that had been rotting since summer. I thought things were going well. I genuinely did. Looking back, I can see the signs I missed. Renee was polite in the way that some people are polite when they're tolerating something. Always pleasant enough when Daniel was in the room. Quieter when he wasn't. If I came upstairs in the evening and she was watching television, she would find a reason to move to the bedroom within 10 minutes. I told myself she was tired. New baby. A toddler. A busy life. I gave her every reasonable explanation I could think of. Then, about 4 months in, Daniel mentioned casually at dinner that they'd been thinking about renovating the kitchen. The countertops were outdated. They wanted new appliances. The quote they'd gotten was $22,000. I said it sounded like a nice project. He nodded. Renee smiled and looked at her plate. That weekend, Daniel came downstairs while I was reading. He sat across from me and said they were having a hard time pulling together the renovation budget. He asked if I would consider lending them the $22,000. He said they'd pay me back over 2 years. I said yes, without hesitating. He was my son. I wrote the check the next morning. The kitchen renovation took 6 weeks. It looked beautiful. Renee seemed genuinely happy during those weeks. She talked to me more. She included me in conversations at dinner. I thought the ice had finally broken. It hadn't. The warmth lasted about 3 weeks after the contractors left. Then we were back to where we'd been before. What happened next, I didn't find out until much later. Daniel told me the full story the night he came to apologize, which I'll get to. But here is what was happening behind the scenes. Renee had been going through my mail. I'd been getting financial statements forwarded from my Scottsdale address, quarterly reports, account summaries. I hadn't thought to update every mailing address to a P.O. box. I didn't think I needed to. I was living with my son. I trusted the household. Renee had opened several of those envelopes. She had seen the account balances. She knew I had significantly more money than I had ever let on. She didn't confront me. She went to Daniel. I don't know everything she said to him in private. I only know what changed afterward. Daniel started bringing up money more often, subtle at first, mentioning that property taxes had gone up, that Oliver needed a specialist for an ear issue, that the car needed work. Each time, I helped. Not because I felt pressured, at least not consciously, but because he was my son, and these were my grandchildren, and that's what family does. Then, about 8 months into my stay, Renee started making comments, small ones, about how tight the house felt with 4 adults and 2 children, about how Sophie was getting older and might benefit from having the basement as a playroom, about how some of their friends had come to visit and felt uncomfortable with the arrangement. That last one stung, though I kept my face even. I brought it up with Daniel privately. I told him I was getting the sense that Renee wasn't comfortable with me there. I told him I wasn't asking for anything except honesty. I said if it wasn't working, I could find my own place, and we could still see each other all the time. I meant it genuinely. Daniel looked me in the eye and said, "Dad, this is your home too. Renee is just adjusting. Don't read too much into it." I believed him. I shouldn't have. 3 weeks later, I came upstairs on a Sunday evening to return a casserole dish to the kitchen. Daniel and Renee were having a conversation they didn't realize I could hear. I wasn't eavesdropping. I had stopped at the top of the stairs when I heard my name. Renee's voice, controlled, firm. "I need you to talk to him, Daniel. I need this to change. He's been here almost a year. It was supposed to be temporary." Daniel, quieter. "He doesn't have anywhere to go. He has $2 million, Daniel. He can go wherever he wants. He chooses to be here because it's convenient. And honestly, I feel like a stranger in my own house. I can't take it anymore." I stood there for a moment. Then I walked quietly back downstairs. I didn't sleep well that night. I told myself to wait, to give Daniel the chance to come to me, the way a man should when he has a difficult conversation ahead of him. I gave him a week. He didn't come. What he did instead was stop by my suite on a Thursday evening, and what came out of his mouth was something I have replayed many times since. He sat down, he folded his hands, and he said, "Dad, Renee and I have been talking. We think it might be time for you to start looking for your own place. You've got the resources. It might be healthier for everyone. We were thinking you could be out by the end of next month." He said it the way you tell a tenant their lease isn't being renewed. I asked him if this was his decision or Renee's. He said it was theirs. Together. I looked at my son for a long moment. I thought about Carol. I thought about every school play I'd attended, every baseball game I'd driven him to, every tuition check, every time I'd shown up when he called. I thought about the $22,000 sitting in that kitchen 10 feet above my head. I said, "All right, Daniel, I'll be out in 2 weeks." He looked surprised. I think he expected more resistance, maybe an argument, maybe tears. I gave him nothing except a calm nod and a steady voice. He said, "Dad, it's not that we don't love you." I said, "Good night, son." He left. I sat in my chair for a long time after that. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was thinking clearly, which is something I've always been able to do when it matters. I thought about what had happened, what had really happened, and what it told me about the people involved. Then I picked up the phone and called my attorney. His name is Frank. We've worked together for over 20 years. I told him I needed to update some documents and that I needed it done within the week. He said he would make himself available. Good man, Frank. The following morning, I made a series of phone calls. My financial advisor, my bank, Frank again, with a list of specific changes I needed made. Within 4 days, everything was restructured. I found a 2-bedroom apartment in a newer building about 12 minutes from Daniel's house. Nice place. 3rd floor. Big windows. A gym downstairs and a small courtyard with a fountain. I signed a 14-month lease and paid the first 3 months up front. I moved in on a Friday. Daniel helped me carry a few boxes, which I appreciated. We didn't speak much. Renee did not come. For the first 2 weeks, I simply settled in, bought some new furniture, learned the neighborhood, found a good coffee shop 4 blocks away, and started going there most mornings. I won't pretend those weeks were easy. 68 years old and starting over in an apartment. There were nights I sat on the balcony and felt the absence of Carol more sharply than I had in a long time. I missed my grandchildren. Sophie had hugged me hard at the door when I left and said, "Grandpa, are you coming back?" I'd told her I would see her very soon. I meant it. What I did not miss was the feeling of being watched in a place I was supposed to call home. I had not realized how heavy that feeling was until I no longer had it. I gave Daniel 3 weeks before I reached out. I asked if I could take the kids for ice cream on Saturday. He agreed. The four of us, me, Sophie, Oliver in his stroller, and a park bench and 2 scoops each. Oliver was too small to have any, but he grabbed at Sophie's cone the entire time, and she screamed about it, and it was the most ordinary, perfect afternoon I'd had in months. Renee texted me that evening. First time she'd ever texted me directly. She thanked me for taking the kids and said Sophie had talked about it all through dinner. I did not respond. The $22,000 they owed me the kitchen loan I had mentioned to Frank. He had drafted a formal repayment request, simple and clean, legally documented. Payment due within 90 days. Frank sent it by certified mail to the house. Daniel called me that night. He was not his calm self on that call. "Dad, this is you hired a lawyer to send us a letter for family money?" I said, "It was a loan, Daniel. We both knew that at the time." He said they didn't have $22,000 sitting around. I said I understood, and that Frank could discuss payment arrangements if needed, but that the clock had started on the 90 days. There was a silence on his end. Then he said, "Is this because of what happened? Because we asked you to get your own place?" I said, "This is because I lent you money and documented it as a loan." He hung up. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window. There was one more thing I needed to tell him. I had not told him yet because I wanted him to sit with the smaller thing first. I waited another week. Then I asked him to come to my apartment for dinner. Just the two of us. I cooked. Pot roast, his mother's recipe, the one he'd asked me to make every birthday growing up. We ate. We talked some. He was stiff, waiting for something, though he didn't know what. After dinner, over coffee, I told him I had updated my estate documents. I told him I had established an irrevocable trust for Sophie and Oliver. Their education, their futures fully funded and protected, controlled by a trustee until they each turned 25. No one can touch it. Not me, not him, not Renee. I told him I had removed him as the primary beneficiary of my estate. I watched his face. He said quietly, "Dad," I said, "I want you to understand something. I'm not doing this out of anger. I'm doing it because I watched how you handled this situation, and it told me something. The house I helped you buy, the loan for the kitchen, 8 months of contribution to your household, and when your wife became uncomfortable, you handed me a move-out date like I was a tenant behind on rent. I needed to know who you were. Now I know." He said, "That's not fair." I said, "I know you believe that." He said, "Renee pushed for it. You have to know that. It was mostly her." I said, "You're a 64-year-old man, Daniel." He was quiet a long time. Then he said, "What do I have to do?" I said, "Nothing right now. I'm not asking for anything. I want you to think about what kind of man you want to be. That's all. The rest is up to you." He left looking smaller than when he arrived. In the months that followed, Daniel came around. Not all at once. Not dramatically. He called more often. He started stopping by my apartment without Renee, just to talk. He asked about my week, my health, what I was reading. One evening, he showed up with a 6-pack, and we watched baseball for 3 hours, and it felt, for the first time in years, like being with my son. He repaid the $22,000 in full, in 2 installments, 3 weeks ahead of the 90-day deadline. Renee I saw at family events. She was polite, civil. I did not go out of my way, and neither did she. I had no desire to pun and teach her, but I also had no desire to pretend. Sophie came to my apartment almost every Saturday. We baked, watched cartoons, went to the farmer's market. She picked out a small succulent for my kitchen windowsill and named it Gerald Jr., which I found deeply undignified and completely wonderful. Oliver was walking by then, getting into everything, and I babysat him on Wednesday afternoons so Renee could have a few hours to herself. I did it for him, not for her. He didn't know the difference. He would toddle across my living room floor, fall down, look at me with total bewilderment, and then get up and do it again. I loved him for that. As for the estate, I haven't changed it back. Not yet. Maybe someday. Daniel knows it's a possibility and knows what it depends on. We don't talk about it directly. We don't need to. What I will say is this. I spent 41 years building something, and for a brief, foolish period, I let myself believe that love was enough to protect it. That family was a guarantee. It isn't. Love without respect is just sentiment. And sentiment will smile at your face and open your mail when you're not looking. I'm not bitter. I want to be clear about that. Bitter is what happens when you let what was done to you define you. I refuse that. I wake up in my apartment on the 3rd floor, make my coffee, Watch the morning come in through the big windows, and I think this is mine. Every inch of it. No one is tolerating my presence here. No one is counting the days until I leave. Carol would have had strong opinions about all of this. She always did. She would have been furious at Daniel, probably brought him around faster than I did. She would have liked my apartment. She would have teased me about the succulent named Gerald Jr., and then quietly watered it every time she visited. I talk to her sometimes, when the apartment is quiet. I know that probably sounds like something a 68-year-old man alone on a balcony shouldn't admit. I don't particularly care. She was my home. She's been gone 4 years. I'm still learning to carry that, but I am carrying it, and I am standing up straight. If you're listening to this, and you recognize something of yourself in this story, if you've ever sat quietly while someone treated your love like a line item in a budget, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not obligated to fund people who do not respect you. Not even blood. Especially not blood, because blood is the one they count on to make you feel guilty enough to stay silent. Don't stay silent. Know what you have. Know what you've built. Know what you're worth. And if someone tells you to get out, look them in the eye, nod calmly, and make sure that when you go, you take every single thing that is yours.